our January 8th Beechwood Board of Education meeting. Thanks for coming out tonight. And we'll get started, Lori, with a roll call.
Mrs. Berger?
Here.
Mr. Hood?
Here.
Mrs. Slate?
Here.
Mrs. Stricker?
Here.
Okay, thank you. On to, well, we don't have any recognition, I guess.
No recognition, yes.
Okay, public comment. We do have someone that signed up, Corey Yelton.
Hi, I'm Corey Yelton. I spoke last month of my concern about the lack of communication and actions taken regarding the troubling Snapchat threat from early December. And here we are more than a month later, and to my knowledge, there's been zero follow-up to the teachers and certainly no follow-up to parents. It's my understanding that the student was not at school for part or all of the remainder of December, and under the circumstances, it would seem very logical to have alerted the teachers and staff of the student's name and photo so that if he tried to enter the school during his suspension, this would be cause for alarm. It's very puzzling as to why that was not done. Is it because of FERPA? Do you know that since FERPA became law in 1974, there's never been a penalty imposed on any school district in the country for violating it? Did you also know that in the findings from the Parkland, Florida Mass Shooting Commission report, they found that it was evident that there was significant misunderstanding and over-application of privacy laws, including FERPA and HIPAA, and that such over-application was a barrier to necessary and successful information sharing. It would seem to me that this is a very low-risk situation to have provided identifying information to your teachers and staff so that they could help be protected and to protect our students. So again, I'm extremely disappointed and concerned that for whatever reason, you did not feel it pertinent to pass such information along. And further, where is the follow-up? If you aren't allowed to share specific information about the student's disciplinary action, then you should be able to point to a robust policy that parents could reference in lieu of that. I wouldn't call our code of conduct robust. There are many holes. Here are some of the questions that we have as parents at this school. What happens when the student returns to school? Does he have his backpack searched, or is he even allowed to have a backpack? Is he allowed to have a locker? Is someone watching his social media posts? Is he getting supportive services? These are questions that parents have come to me asking. I would love to be able to reference a code of conduct that referenced items like this as a result of a social media post, but we don't appear to have such policies in place. And lastly, why wouldn't you exercise your authority under House Bill 538 that, quote, requires a local board of education to expel a student for at least 12 months if the student makes a threat that poses danger to other students and staff? We didn't all just stop thinking about this after your email. We have continued to be concerned, and judging by the number of parents and teachers that have reached out to my husband and me since the December meeting, I don't think that you've adequately addressed our concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, on to our action item. Take a motion to accept the resignation of Ron Savignano from the board, effective today, January 8th, 2024.
So move.
I'll second.
Do we need any further?
Oh, sorry. Mrs. Berger?
Yes.
Mr. Hood?
Yes.
Mrs. Slate?
Yes.
Mrs. Stricker?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. On to our next item, which is the reorganization of the board.
Speak up a little.
Can you not hear me? Sorry. On to our next item is the reorganization of the board, and we will turn over the meeting to Dr. Stacy for that.
Okay, I'd like to open the floor for nominations for board chair.
I'd like to nominate Jeannie Berger for board chair.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right.
Mrs. Berger?
Yes.
Mr. Hood?
Yes.
Mrs. Slate?
Yes.
Mrs. Stricker?
Yep.
All right, I'll turn the meeting back over to the board chair, Ms. Jeannie Berger.
Okay, the next item is the nomination for the vice chair. I would like to nominate Amy Slate as the vice chair.
I will second the motion.
Mrs. Berger?
Yes.
Mr. Hood?
Yes.
Mrs. Slate?
Yes.
Mrs. Stricker?
Yes.
Okay, and our next item is the nomination for secretary, Dr. Stacy. Take a motion. I'll make the motion to nominate Dr. Stacy for the secretary.
Second that.
Mrs. Berger?
Yes.
Mr. Hood?
Yes.
Mrs. Slate?
Yes.
Mrs. Stricker?
Yes.
Okay, and the next item is the nomination for treasurer, or motion for nomination of treasurer of Christy Ward. I'll make the motion to nominate Christy Ward as the treasurer.
I'll second.
Mrs. Berger?
Yes.
Mr. Hood?
Yes.
Mrs. Slate?
Yes.
Mrs. Stricker?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. On to our next item, which is our discussion and action agenda. We'll set the regular monthly board meetings, dates and times. Take a motion to approve these, approve the board meetings, which will be held on the second Monday of each month at 6 p.m. in the cafeteria. Take a motion.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, second Monday, location cafeteria. We have discussed, not sure exactly when the auditorium comes into play. That'll be up to you guys as well to make an amendment if
Right.
you want to move to the auditorium. But since we know that's not going to be done probably in July, I went ahead and put cafeteria, but that would have to be amended if you decide to change locations once the building opens.
Okay. So nothing we have to do now, we just wait until that time?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay,
Ready? Mrs. Berger?
yes.
Mr. Hood?
Yes.
Mrs. Slate?
Yes.
Mrs. Stricker?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries on to set the works sessions. Take a motion to set the monthly board working session, fourth Monday of each month at 6 p.m. in the cafeteria.
So moved.
Oh, please. I'll second, please.
So I have a question about that.
Uh-huh.
So those are set all, all the time. Do
Uh-huh.
should that say like as needed, or should
You
it?
set them, and then you call them as needed.
Okay, all right,
Otherwise, if we just said as needed, you would have to do it monthly
okay.
for the next month. So I think it's better to just go ahead and set them for the fourth Monday of every month, and then you can initiate them as needed.
Okay. All right.
Mrs.
Lori?
Berger?
Yes.
Mr. Hood?
Yes.
Mrs. Slate?
Yes.
Mrs. Stricker?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries on to the next item, which is finance reviewer. Motion to approve that Amy Slate will be doing the finance reviewer. Take a motion.
I'll move to approve that Amy Sleet will be the finance reviewer.
I'll
I'll
second.
second.
Amy, did you know you were going to do the finance reviewer?
I did.
Is there
I was just
discussion
checking.
on
I was
that?
like, saw that one.
Mrs. Berger?
Yes.
Mr. Hood?
Yes.
Mrs. Slate?
Yes.
Mrs. Stricker?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. On to item D. Whoa.
Was that me or did the light? Okay. Good.
No. Item D, motion to approve the district's comprehensive improvement plan, the CDIP plan. Take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the high school's CDIP plan. Or CSIP,
district.
not DIP.
I'll second.
Okay, we'll go over, actually, Dr. Schobel is going to go over some of the highlights, but what you're doing, would you rather vote on it and then go over it, or would you rather wait to superintendent's report? How do you want me to proceed as far as the review of the CDIP?
Do you have more to add at the superintendent's report, or no?
No, I just
Okay.
need you, I'm asking when you would like Dr. Scholl to do her presentation on the CDIP, because I think it's important. I mean, it's pretty much set by the state, right? So you're approving almost a formality. However, you need to see the areas that we've met and progressing and not met.
Can we vote after the presentation?
Yeah,
No, that, if we do it now.
yeah,
yeah,
yep,
that's
okay.
fine.
Dr. Scholl?
Good evening. So you have in front of you the comprehensive district improvement plan and the comprehensive school improvement plans for both the elementary and the high school. These things are required by the Kentucky Department of Education, as Dr. Stacy said. However, we really try to make these meaningful processes and documents and use it as a tool for us to work with our admin teams, with our staff, with our SBDM councils on areas of growth. These are processes throughout the year. Different reports are due at different times throughout the year, and so you have the combined reports here. SBDMs have seen the school reports, and then Mr. Kaiser and I work on the district improvement plan. When you approve these, they will go on the website. The schools are going to go into a bit more detail at our joint session on the 22nd. As you know, we often kind of share information with them. This was the time, if you remember back from August, that we said where they would kind of share with us the work of the schools this year, their improvement areas, and the steps they are taking towards those goals. So obviously in a small district, the schools and district were very much working on the same things. But for the CDIP, the district improvement plan that Mr. Kaiser and I worked on, this is kind of bigger picture. I'm going to just hit briefly a few highlights. It's a very long document, if you saw, so just going to hit some areas. We have 3-year goals with the state for that CDIP. Those started last year, so we're in the second year. Primarily, they do it all around KSA, the Kentucky Summative Assessment, the state test. We choose to add things like AP, ACT, a little more than the document requires to be sure that we're really looking at all of those areas. Obviously, this is separate from our EDGE program. So a progress update after a year for those 3-year goals. There are some areas which we surpassed the 3-year goals already in year 1, including elementary science, middle school reading and math, high school writing, and our AP pass rate was higher than it has been since we've been keeping record. On track for our goals, so we've made progress. We're on track to meet the 3-year goal: elementary social studies, middle school social studies and writing, high school reading and math, and the ACT. Areas of growth for us, so these would be ones that decreased. However, at Beechwood, sometimes that can be 86%. We're scoring proficient and distinguished in year 1, and we're trying to improve from there. So we're already at high bars, but still, we will always want to pay attention on something that's not growing. And for each of these things, and even some that are already on track and surpassing the goal, we have action steps with the buildings that we've worked on. We touch base monthly with them. We work with them to support through working with staff, through sometimes funding that we have, through planning with them on steps with staff and with students. So areas of growth: elementary reading and math, middle school science, high school science, and social studies by a bit. So all of those things you'll hear a bit more detail on the 22nd about specific action steps that they're doing to work towards those goals. They're also very detailed in that document. As you see, we have to list strategies for each goal, even ones that we are already meeting or exceeding. Other areas that are in the CDIP, so the state calls it the gap population. That means typically populations that are underperforming across the state. So that includes our students with IEPs, individualized education plans, economically disadvantaged, our English learners, groups like that. And so for us, we really focus on all kids all the time. We talk about personalized learning. That's a focus area for us. So we really believe in meeting all students where they are and helping all students to grow. So yes, we have specific strategies, as you'll see, that we list for those groups, but we again really want to be sure that we're helping all students to grow individually. We also have a component on there, quality of school climate and safety survey. This is a survey this state gives to students through the state test on, as it says, the school climate and safety measures. Both elementary and high school surpassed their 3-year goal. Middle school decreased a bit, and we've already taken steps in how we're going to handle that with middle schoolers. We think often with that survey, the safety measures, sometimes we just might not be communicating with them things that are done and making sure that they understand that survey, what it's asking, and what Beechwood is doing. So we can do a better job of helping them understand that, and we're allowed to do that. And then finally, the last two components with the state are graduation rate and post-secondary readiness, extremely important on ensuring that we're preparing our students for their future. Graduation rate is 100%. And post-secondary readiness, we have 98.8% of our seniors that graduated who showed that they were post-secondary ready. Primarily, that's most students achieve that through something like the ACT and meeting benchmark. There's also some ways through AP, dual credit, earning industry certifications to show that they're ready for college or career after leaving Beechwood. So again, that's something that even though it's a very high percentage, we just were talking last week about that and which students and what we're going to do for each of them. So that is the very brief overview of the long document.
Yeah, that is very brief for that document. So good that you were able to get
That's
that.
the highlights, just so you
Yeah.
at least know kind of focus areas. Again, on the 22nd, schools, we'll talk more about the specifics that we've been working on, but happy to answer any questions in the meantime.
Yes, this will be an agenda item for the joint session with SBDMs. A couple of just key highlights. I would say that KS, while it's important to us, it would rank 4th or 5th. ACT is number 1 as far as some of these are high school, but AC is our number 1 accountability measure and from our internal processes. AP is number 2. The EDGE programming is number 3. Then secondary readiness. If you're not ready for your next stop, then chances are you're not going to be financially independent, and that has to be a goal. And then KAS. Now, that doesn't mean that if any one of those gets out of line, it couldn't bump up, but that's the way we kind of approach it internally. And so far, our results on KAS, the Kentucky assessment, has proven that we've been doing a decent job. I think we outpaced everybody in Northern Kentucky. One thing that I would like to also point out on that gap, we continue to have a very growing population in some of our gap populations. That has been significant since my tenure here. So that is something that we continue to look at. How are we going to support the growth in that demographic? But that is one of the big shifts on gap data.
Is that still the assessment, the state assessment, that's still one of their big items, is the gap? Okay.
Yep. And we have a couple of different assessments in that area, but that is something that is changing about our population. And then finally, the areas that really we've focused on internally, elementary reading and math, even though they were high and dropped some, they did drop. We've got to make sure that we're looking back. A lot of it was in 1 grade level. And then 11th grade science. Even though we didn't see a problem in the science ACT, we weren't quite at the level we wanted, on the KES. So not a panic moment on either one of those because they're still high in relation to the state, but still in areas of focus for us.
That was my question. And are other, state testing, is that other school districts, are they similar in how that's happened with us too?
We're still above state average on
Right.
both of those, but the fact that we didn't grow is why they're an area of concern for us.
Okay.
Any specific questions now, or you'll have an opportunity at the joint session, but obviously you're voting on them tonight.
Thank you, Sarah, for the presentation.
Absolutely. Any questions, anytime, reach out.
I'll finally just say,
Thank
with
you.
the state giving us a mandate of kind of what areas have to be covered, we go above and beyond that. So there's really not a lot of changing that can happen anyway, which is also a shift in the last decade. So they're kind of set. All right, any other questions? All right.
You ready?
Yes.
Mrs. Berger?
Yes.
Mr. Hood?
Yes.
Mrs. Slate?
Yes.
Mrs. Stricker?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. On to item E, the motion to approve the school's comprehensive school improvement plan for the high school.
I'll make the motion. I was waiting for,
Oh.
his mouth was moving.
Oh,
I'll make the motion.
No, I.
okay.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
delay.
Okay, high school, like I said, it's going to be a mirror of ours. They're going to go over the specifics at the joint session. I think SBDM is preparing a presentation from both schools. But again, this is state directives on the different areas. I think everything is really positive for us on what's met or not met. Sarah, Dr. Strobel went over those different aspects because we're so small. Our district elementary is our elementary. Our district high school is our high school. So it's kind of a repeat of each other for ours since we don't have multiple locations. But if there's any specific questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
I do not.
All right?
Have any?
Ready?
Okay.
Mrs. Berger?
Yes.
Mr. Hood?
Yes.
Mrs. Slate?
Yes.
Mrs. Stricker?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. On to item F, the comprehensive school improvement plan. Take a motion to approve the elementary comprehensive school improvement plan.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Do you have anything to add on that?
Repeat of the high school.
Yep. Okay.
Mrs. Berger?
Yes.
Mr. Hood?
Yes.
Mrs. Slate?
Yes.
Mrs. Stricker?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. On to item G, which is the 24-25 calendar. Take a motion to approve the proposed school calendar for 24 and 25 school year.
I'll make a motion to approve the school calendar for 24-25 school year.
I'll second.
There's also a draft for 25, 26, and 26, 27. Is that, are we going to do a first reading for that, or are we?
Yeah, so so what you're doing tonight is you're putting out the 24-25 budget officially, because this is the second reading. So it'll have, this is.
Calendar.
I'm
Not
sorry.
the budget, the calendar.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
24-25 calendar.
Yes.
So it'll be published, tomorrow. But you're also saying that you have no intent to change that, right? Because we've
Right.
kind of held to the same
Yes.
process. So there's a draft version of 25-26 and 26-27. You can't approve those until
Next year.
much later, but you're basically telling everybody this is kind of the way we've done business.
Well, this one is changed. Well, this current year, it was changed compared to what we're going to go for next year as far as the start date.
Right. Well, we've typically. So what happened year before last? It hit just on every 7 years. You're going to have a weird start date, but then we held to that calendar instead of making the change.
Okay.
So the common themes: the start date is on a Wednesday for a shortened week. Whenever we come back, first week of October is your basic fall break. Coming back from a winter break, we don't start on the day directly after New Year's Day. And then, as usual.
Which was a change from the current one.
Yes.
Okay.
First week of April is spring break. And then we've always held to graduation since I've been here after the first year, the Friday before Memorial Day.
Yep.
Same for the two drafts.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions about the calendar? Okay.
You ready? Mrs. Berger?
Yes.
Mr. Hood?
Yes.
Mrs. Slate?
Yes.
Mrs. Stricker?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Now we're on to the budget.
Right. I do like putting out the two calendars. I think that's good. I think that way, so many of our folks travel. That gives them an advance, idea of how to plan stuff. So I appreciate that.
Okay, do you have, this is just an information only, there's no vote on that, on the draft budget? Do you
That
have
is
anything
correct.
to add on that?
January every year, we have to bring a draft budget. This one's particularly interesting because we're still dealing somewhat with the property assessment increases. I will tell each of you that that is not, the year number one is not our big concern. We were very healthy in our budget. So for the most part, we're still in decent shape other than our carry being low. One thing that actually helped us that was unintended positive consequence as far as finance, we had a lot of staff leave towards the very, very end and then hired a lot of staff in like year 9 or 10 or 11. So we saved a significant amount on certified salary. Like I said, we weren't intending on that to happen to be the case, but that was a reality. So that adjustment, along with the contingency adjustment, has basically put us in a decent spot for next year. Again, we still have a lower, the contingency is only 803,000, and we typically ran about 1.5, 1.6. So you can see the two differences and add those up, and you're really close to 1.1 million.
And where are we on, like, do you think we'll see any progress with that in the session on the SEEK, or?
So,
how?
I mean, I don't think that the SEEK formula will be attacked in a budget session. However, we are, extensively lobbying for a phase-in that would allow that 1.1 million to be phased in over a three-year cycle. That will give you more of an opportunity to catch up, over that span, as opposed to trying to eat it all in year one. And the problem is, okay, we've eaten it, but now you're still looking at, staff raises and other potential costs that could pop up. That's going to be a domino, because all this is having certain assumptions. It has an assumption that the PVA in the interim years increase won't be over 3 or 4%. It has a assumption that you all will take a 4% tax increase. It has an assumption that it's a step only. If you decide to give above a step, then we would have to adjust that. No SEEK base increase. Now, if we were to come into the session and they were to increase SEEK, that would change this whole thing, and we would have to come back to you. And there is a chance of that. I think there is a chance that they could impact SEEK. The staffing shortages across the state are getting severe enough that they've got to tackle it at some point in time. It's just when they decide to take that on. We have vacancies across the state in every area, from bus drivers to cafeteria workers to custodians to aides to teachers to admin. That is one consistent theme throughout, and you're starting to look at a lot of districts trying to outsource some of those things, which on the bottom line can be a win, but then the personal touch and the interaction with the school community is a little different. So we're lobbying on the phase-in. There is a chance that they do put funding in place, and then the other main thing that we're lobbying is that gap funding for the systems that started the project before COVID, and then add the increase in cost during COVID due to cost of materials and supply chain. So those are the three topics that we're working on as a board and district in Frankfort this session.
So just because we have a phase-in, I'm talking about future, like.
You're talking about SEEK reform.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. We can't keep
that.
up.
Might happen next year.
I don't think, okay.
Maybe. It's so complicated, nobody really wants
I
to
know,
attack
but
it.
we should be able to keep our local dollar is the thing. That's the biggest push, because, to ask for an increase because we can't keep our dollar is difficult to ask our community.
We lose over $3 million a year, right? But the other systems across the state that have a declining enrollment will argue that they need to be subsidized at a higher level because of property values dropping. So, and you heard my testimony at KBE, right? I feel I don't envy the people making the decisions because the state of Kentucky has 3 geographical regions that are so different and populations are different, economic different, growth is different, and it's hard to write one policy or one law that equally or that allows all of those areas to progress. So while we lobby for a change in SEEK for us to be able to keep more because that's a problem for us, other places are lobbying, in the exact opposite way. The main issue for us is there's, 37 SEEK losers and 130-something SEEK winners. So,
We still have to keep working on it,
I
'cause-
will keep working on it.
yeah, we do. I mean, just,
But with this being said, depending on raises, depending on what happens in the legislature, you're still physically sound, even with the hit, moving into our projected budget for next year. Ms. Ward, you have anything to add?
Well, I was gonna say the other thing was that some late grants came in to help fund some of the salaries.
Yeah, you guys,
Oh, I'm sorry.
not
The
in
other-
there,
I was-
because that doesn't,
The other thing was we were saying some late grants came in that helped support some of the salaries too. That was the other piece that kind of helped us out. The SBMH, school-based mental health, yeah. And LAVAC, whatever, which is.
yeah, the LAVIC grant was a
LAVIC,
big.
yeah, thank you.
The LAVIC grant was a really big
Yeah.
bonus. The grant for the counseling grant from the co-op was another bonus. Yes, I mean, that was, that's close to $170,000.
And how long-
Which helped.
how long is that grant?
Well, the LAVIC was just for 1 year, but it was renewed.
Okay.
And the counseling is for 3.
Yeah.
Guaranteed for 3.
Okay. Thank you.
It's the first year of the 3. This is the first year of the 3.
Yes.
Yes, the first.
Yes. The biggest issues for the board, in my opinion, is what happens to property assessments moving forward, right? 31% was the largest in the history of the state of Kentucky, right? Unprecedented, right? So you've absorbed one time, but that is the angle for the continuing lobbying. What if that were to happen again, right? We now couldn't absorb a second hit of a 31% increase. I mean, that is the impetus behind the phase-in, right? If you get hit with that on the low end, right? If you lose a major industry as a SEEK winner, you get a phase-in, right? But if you lose, or if you increase your property values and lose a large percentage of your budget as a SEEK loser, there's no phase-in. So all we're asking is equity on both sides, and I hope that happens. That would help us tremendously.
Mike, when do we expect to know when that might happen?
Well, I mean, I can tell you right now that it might happen based on my conversations with our local senator who's over the appropriations. However, Brad, we never know until sin die. So that is right around the last day of March, first day of April. So, I mean, we'll have a concrete answer at that time.
Okay. That's what I thought.
Yep.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions on budget? Okay. So that was not a,
No vote.
That was it's not a voting. That's a.
Right, it's just-
We're required
we're
every
gonna
year in
move on.
January to bring our updated budget.
yeah. So we'll move on to item I. We have a lot of things to vote on today.
Yes,
We
we got a
do.
lot of things
We
to
don't
vote on
usually get
tonight.
this far down in the alphabet.
All right, we've only touched tuition 2 times during my time here.
Okay, can we do a thing first?
Oh,
Then we vote?
sorry.
Okay, tuition increase, take a motion to increase the tuition amount charged to out-of-district students from $4,100 and students living out of state increases to $6,400. Take a motion?
I'll make a motion.
So move. Second?
Okay, go.
Okay, we've only touched tuition 2 times during my tenure at Beechwood. One was right after the tax increase, and this one is right after the property increase. So our basically standard operating procedure is we don't really touch it as long as our local residents aren't being touched. But when our local residents get touched, then we look from an equity standpoint that should extend to tuition as well. So that is the impetus behind this recommendation to increase tuition for out-of-district students.
And will you explain further on the amount and why it's only what the total amount is versus like the SEEK that follows the child if?
Right, so some questions, some people have asked the question, well, you're still getting a better deal as a tuition student. The thing for us, we get their ADA, which is the amount of money that a state gives that student wherever they attend school. So that comes with us as well, right? So we get a student's ADA, plus we get their tuition, which is actually a little over when you look at property taxes versus the average home in Fort Mitchell, what a kid in district is paying. So we look at all those numbers and try to make sure it's, again, equitable, but you are putting a little bit more in as a tuition student than you are as an in-district. Now, obviously, if we have somebody that has multiple kids in the home, that obviously is going to change. But for us, looking at ADA and tuition in comparison to the average property in Fort Mitchell and cost per student, we feel like we have a decent ratio there.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions on tuition?
Questions? All right, Mrs. Berger?
Yes.
Mr. Hood?
Yes.
Mrs. Slate?
Yes.
Mrs. Stricker?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. On to our consent agenda. Does anybody have anything they want to remove from consent agenda or to make a motion to accept as is?
I'll move
I'll make a
to,
motion to accept it as it is.
I'll second.
Second, thank you.
Okay, one that I always try to point out because I think it's one of the awesome things that you guys do other than pay for all transportation for all extracurriculars. The student accident insurance renewal is on there, and that is something that you guys do as a board, as an administrator and a coach in other districts. I continue to say thank you. That is awesome that you have a supplemental insurance plan for every single student on campus.
And it didn't really go up?
It did not. So, and another win.
He's texting.
No.
No, that's awesome. Along with the transportation, so I appreciate that. Any other specific questions about the consent agenda?
Nope. Ready, Mrs. Berger?
Yes.
Mr. Hood?
Yes.
Mrs. Slate?
Yes.
Mrs. Stricker?
Yes.
Okay. Motion carries. On to superintendent's report.
Okay, other than the budget being a little bit healthier than what I had intended, the only other thing I would like to do is update you on construction progress. This is the first time in 18 months I've sat down on a construction update and said we're a little behind. So we're a little behind. Everything in front of the building, unfortunately, is on stall because we can't hang drywall until we are officially dried in. So the opening on the side that they had to keep to crane the steel in for the auditorium has officially hit us like I was afraid it would. So holidays, a couple of rain days, we're currently behind in that area. Well, I sit here and tell you that it's a problem yet. I won't sit here and tell you it's a problem yet. However, they have about 30 days to get it dried in or it will be a problem. So, and it's just the reality. They can't move forward with some of the work in 3/4 of the building because they put it up and moisture gets in. Then we have a problem and they have to redo it, and then we're farther behind than we would be anyway. So that's kind of where we're at. We've pretty much had daily meetings trying to get it back. The main problem for us was when we lose crews, right? When we got the brick done, the masons pulled off to another big job across the river. So now trying to get the masons back has been the problem over the last couple weeks. So.
What about the footers over on the main entrance on the side there? Did that get done? That was all done?
Footer's done. They started block today, but they're still, by the time they block and brick and get everything set, You know, it's just whether or not the next 30 days are like today or like tomorrow.
And what about the roof?
The roof is dried in.
It is. Yep.
Cupola will go back on next week or the week after. When they set it, then they'll start shingling. So it's not the roof. It's not the roof. It all comes down to this one spot.
The entrance?
Yeah, on the high school side. So I continue to keep it posted. Everything else is ready for drywall and flooring. It's progressing nicely. But you know, I said in a meeting today where they refused to move forward until it was dried in, and I don't blame them, because if they move forward and then there's a problem with dampness or mold, then you know, they're on the hook to redo it.
And when will we know when they're coming back over to?
This
will we
time
have-
next month, I'll be able to tell you whether we're in trouble or not.
Or before then?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we should be able to see. I mean, it's just the rain days.
Right.
I mean, if we have good weather for the next 30 days, there's a shot we're still in good shape. If we don't have good weather over the next 30 days, then we're going to be farther behind. We get farther behind, then we're going to start going into contingency planning for the first month of school.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. We've always known it's a complex project, and the most complex of the complex, and it's a fight. Every single piece is a fight, because vendors don't want to order too far ahead with the supply chain issues that still exist. They're better, but they still exist. The vendors don't want to order too far out and then have to store the product, right? We don't have anywhere to store the product, so we're constantly battling every sub to get their stuff ordered and to store it, and battling with Codell to make sure that they have storage space. If the vendor doesn't have, or if the sub doesn't have storage space, that Codell provides the storage space. But you know, they don't want to spend the money and order too far out, because then they have to pay before our pay app comes through from the work being done. You know, so that's a constant give and take.
Will that delay what they're going to be starting on in the other building by the
We
gym?
met
or-
today on the timeline for this building. I still plan on having them go ahead and start in March. However, the priority has to be here. So I don't want them pulling off here to go over there, and I don't want them splitting the crew to go over here.
Okay.
I would rather this be delayed. We can deal with locker rooms being delayed or the gym renovation being delayed. It's next to impossible to deal with, you know, the front being too far delayed. And I will still say, only other thing that I keep telling myself, we're the only project in the state that up to tonight was still on the timeline. So it's not a isolated issue.
Okay. You have anything else?
No.
We did finance.
No, I've had enough.
Are you good? Okay. All right, on to our agenda. Take a motion to approve the agenda as part of the official board minutes.
I'll make the motion to approve the agenda as part of the official board minutes.
I'll second.
Second.
Mrs. Berger?
Yes.
Mr. Hood?
Yes.
Mrs. Slate?
Yes.
Mrs. Stricker?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Do we have any other new business?
Boys play in the OA, I think, Justin, when is that? Tomorrow night? Girls got beat, we missed that. Being able to notify you at a board meeting, but I know that's coming up for the boys. Anything else on our?
And the girls played already?
Girls lost, Saturday night? Holy Cross, yeah. I think it was the same night as the Cupcake game.
Friday?
No.
Friday-ish or
Was
something?
it?
Was it Friday?
Yeah, Saturday, yeah, one of those.
Saturday? Okay.
Yeah, I don't have anything else.
Nothing
from
else?
my end.
Melanie? Nothing? Brad?
I'd just like to thank Lori and Tim and Mike for helping me be able to be here and set it up so I didn't fly home for it.
I appreciate it. Thank you for joining.
Thanks,
Yes.
Brad.
Okay, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll
So
move to
moved.
adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay.
You second? Okay.
All right, thank you.